Okay, we're going to have a look at the correct stance on the surfboard now. Very critical area of your surfing. This is where the real surfing starts. So the main thing is always having our feet down the centre line of the board. Back foot about 90 degrees to the board. Front foot, let's call it about 30 degrees of rotation, no more. It can be a little bit less, but really no more than that's, let's call that 30 degrees there. And feet in a nice comfortable stance. They can be slightly wider than shoulder width. You don't really want the stance out this wide, although again, less of a problem to be in a wider stance than it is if your stance gets too narrow, very hard to balance like this. So just a nice comfortable stance, and again, this is why you want to practice in this area, just to get your body comfortable with being in the right stance. If you're going to be comfortable on a moving surfboard, on a moving wave, you would hope that you'll be very comfortable on flat ground here. So the other thing, weight distribution wise, is we want about 2/3 of the weight on the front foot, about 1/3 on the back. So you're going to feel that front thigh is going to carry most of your load. The back foot is going to be taking a little bit of load, but really is just stabilising the tail of the board. And then to achieve this correct position, we really need to have the bum out at the back. So as we go lower, we really need to get that bum out this way. You'll notice the head obviously has to come across that way to balance you out. But the lower we are and the further back we have the pelvis and the further forward with the head, really achieve a much more stable position. You'll notice also my arms are always one on either side of the board. So the front side stance like this, if I was surfing this direction, not as much rotation in the upper body, but even still the hand is on the heel side rail of the board, and the leading hand sort of sits in its fairly natural spot out there. If we were to surf backside, we'd need to rotate everything, shoulders, the entire body from the head to the toes. And the way we're going to do that is really through the front arm and releasing the back heel. The whole body's going to move. The front foot is going to torque a bit on the board, but it's not really going to rotate. So it's going to be about the only bit that stays static is that, although it is going to influence the board. Everything else, as I go to the backside stance, is going to rotate in sync. So that's head, shoulders, through the torso, hip rotation, and ideally even getting that bum a bit further back there and onto the heels. And really that's getting into a quite extreme sort of bottom turn position. In fact, bottom turning, you really want to have that hand a bit lower like this to be contacting the water as well. And off the top, backhand position is more like the hand over that way. But the main thing is that you need to rotate the entire body in sync. And the way to that set is keeping that loose heel. The back heel here, if that's locked down, it really does limit your mobility. As soon as that's able to twist, and I even say it's like doing the twist, chubby checker I think it was. So yeah, hips back, loose on that back foot. If you want to go to the backside, we really need to be looking out to the backside and really having that leading hand almost out at 90 degrees to the board on the backside. Into this stance, and again dropping down, hips back. I can straighten this leg if I'm on my heel, and that will push my hips back. Again, you're going to need to adjust your body in all of these positions to find your centre of gravity. And that's again what this exercise is all about. It's spending time in the stance position, spending time deliberately putting yourself off balance, which is what you will be doing whenever you're doing turns, or in fact, any sort of weight distribution effectively is putting yourself off balance and then maintaining control in that position. Simulate a paddle, and then straight up. And there we go, I've landed on those marks. And you'll see back foot again square. You can have the back heel, again, you don't really want to land with it in the air, but not being heavy on the back heel. You will be much heavier on the front foot, both heel and toe. And now from this stance, obviously, you want to get comfortable getting in your low stance, rolling onto that front foot to feel front weight distribution, starting to roll back on the back foot to feel back weight distribution, rolling onto the toes to simulate a toe side, front side turn, rolling onto the heels, simulating a backside turn, and you notice just subtle body position changes throughout all these movements to maintain balance. And really most of the motion is coming from pushing the hips forward and back. So you'll notice my head doesn't move as far as my hips do when I go forward. It really is, not that you want to get into that karate stance, but back with the hips and forward with the hips like this. Not so much rotation when you're just transferring the weight front and back. And in fact, less rotation you would think when you're going through most bottom turns. It's really about weighting the heels and weighting the toes. That's where the turn's going to come in from, because you've got to drive that board with your feet. Yeah, the upper body's going to balance you out. The upper body will give you some rotation in certain circumstances, but the feet are going to be controlling the board. So again, getting back to these control elements, like you were controlling the mat or the board with your body in the prone position, now you've got to think about controlling that board through your toes. So start feeling the soles of your feet, start feeling where the contact patches are, start feeling how much influence you have over those contact patches. And again, walking around in shoes all day is not going to give you the feedback that you need for surfing. So spend a bit of time. Obviously, all these exercises, please no shoes when you're trying to simulate surfing exercises, because that feedback through the feet is hugely important. You know, that's really what you're trying to develop with all of this. Back to the center line down the board. More weight on the front foot, about 2/3 in the front, 1/3 at the back. Lighter rear heel. The leading hand is the one that people have trouble with. Really, the leading hand needs to be held out to the heel side. Particularly on the back side, you never want to let that leading hand come around this way and you're trying to turn that way, it doesn't work. On your forehand, you've got a little bit more leeway. As you go into a proper forehand turn, the hand will come towards the center line of the board. And again, both arms held out, fairly much straight elbows and fairly much straight out like this. That's going to be your sort of maximum balance factor here. They're obviously going to move a little bit as you're in the surf action, but not with their arms in like this and not down low like that, and not just non-functional, because that's half your body's control is now gone. Same sort of situation when we were paddling on the board. We were controlling it with our body. Now, even though we're on the stance, we've got a control element of the feet, but the upper body is now providing us the balance and control on top of that solid base. And again, that solid base does need to be as low as possible, which really means that bum out. You're going to take some force on these quads, and you need to start doing some squat exercises and those sort of things to develop that if this sort of stance is a problem. So, okay, from that basic stance like this, now we can really turn, keeping that bum out. If we turn like that, turn this way, and just get a little bit of a simulation of starting to feel where you need to move your body to be balanced in these positions. And you notice there's not a huge amount of rotation, although this really is simulating what would be, you know, a reasonable bottom turn combo, you know, a forehand bottom turn or a backside bottom turn. You really don't do a lot of this in the bottom turns, much less than you think. You will do a little bit of that when you're doing a snap off the top, but through most turns, there's actually less rotation of the upper body than you think, and if there is that rotation, that's the point where you really would turn around. So that's really a little bit for surfers that are a little bit more advanced. So at the beginning, just be stable with that base. The main thing is you've got to have the stable base, and then put yourself off balance from the stable base and find the point that holds it up. You'll notice you've got to adjust your body, or else if I don't adjust, if I just lean forward here, I'm going to fall. If I just lean back this way, I'm going to fall. The reason I haven't fallen is because I've moved my body accordingly to stop myself from falling. So there we go. The basics of a good stance. And at this point, if you can master these three elements, and again, they can be all done outside the water, and the more work that you can do in these areas and be confident, no matter what level of surfer you are, it means you're going to avoid very common mistakes that's causing you to lose waves and miss the stroke of surfing. So, let's roll. See you in Bali soon.